I saw a girl the other day wearing a Rick and Morty t-shirt, and I asked her if she knew what her shirt meant. It went like this. Me. Hey, nice shirt. Do you understand where your shirt is from? Her. Haha, yeah, it's like a shirt from like a cartoon show or something like that. Get swifty, haha. Me. Have you ever watched any of the episodes? Her. Yeah, like I've watched a few, but I saw this at Hot Topic and thought it was cute, haha. Me. How many schmeckles did you pay for it? Her. What? I paid like $20 for it. I don't know what schmeckles are. Me. Point proven. Have a nice day, miss. I didn't have a proper intro, so I thought I'd share this funny shit. What's up, my dudes? Welcome back to the channel of Girl in Costume Nerds Out on Video. So I've been watching Rick and Morty Season 4, which has been stellar and hilarious so far, and if you haven't heard of this show yet, then I gotta say I'm impressed. This is also probably your first time on the internet, so welcome. But here's a quick rundown of the premise. Super smart alcoholic grandpa takes his grandson on weird, wacky, and out-of-this-world sci-fi adventures. And yeah, it may actually sound pretty simple and wholesome on the outset, and a lot of you diehard fans are probably ready to yell at me in the comments for downplaying the concept of this series, but let me explain. While it may sound like it's rehashing the same old wacky buddy comedy formula, Rick and Morty is an animation that truly dives into a whole new level of clever, smart, and inventive comedy that I honestly haven't seen in other shows. South Park comes as a close second, but because Rick and Morty dabbles in the world of sci-fi, the genre allows them to explore all these incredibly strange and mind-bending ideas and concepts. Plus, you know, being animated, the show can be as visually crazy as it wants to be. You've got multiple timelines, trippy life simulations, hive minds, aliens that implant false memories, aliens that serve to write apps, aliens from a mini world that serve to run a car engine, bird people. Okay, so maybe not all of them were rooted in scientific concepts, but Dan Harmon, the creator, did an excellent job of weaving in these high-level concepts and theories like Schrodinger's cat, multiverses, and microverses with a substantial dose of wacky and irreverent and, of course, hilarious comedy. Currently, it's in its 4th season, and I gotta say, it really hasn't had a bad one. Like, sure, there are a few misses at times, but it's like comparing luxury cars. You're gonna be drawn to some more than the others, but they're all good. But then I'm always left wondering, this show is so smart, so inventive, almost like another show I used to love on TV. The Big Bang Theory. I'm just kidding, it's Community. It's Community. Community was a series that premiered in 2009 by Dan Harmon, starring an ensemble cast of mega-talented stars that included Alison Brie, Joel McHale, Ken Jeong, Donald Glover, and Chevy Chase. The story centered on a study group of 7 misfits who attempt to survive their years at community college, at times literally. And well, it doesn't help that its management is constantly fumbled by a desperate and perpetually frantic dean. Its courses seem cobbled together by a 5-year-old.
My name is Professor Robinswin. Who's ready to work?
Then school flag proudly brandishes the symbol of an anus. The dysfunction of their school and their even more dysfunctional characters made for some incredibly entertaining 20-minute episodes. But non-stop jokes and wacky hijinks weren't all the show had to offer. It also had a surprising amount of heart, with tons of character development and evolving on-screen relationships as the show went on. Of course, run by a mind like Dan Harmon's, Community was definitely not your ordinary sitcom. In fact, it was pretty anti-anything that was gaining mainstream success in television at the time, which may have contributed to its lack of success, that we'll be diving more into later. For all its innovative ideas and likable characters played by perfectly casted actors, the show was yet another cynical lesson in how inventiveness, no matter how brilliant, doesn't always pay off. While both had their humble beginnings, Community remained as a passionate cult favorite, while Rick and Morty obviously skyrocketed to immense worldwide success. And finally offered something on television that resonated with the true intellectuals. But considering that they both had a similar style of comedy with very similar levels of cleverness and creativity, the innovative series of wacky college adventures had such a short lifespan that a lot of people still consider one of the biggest sins in TV history. So why did Community fail, whereas another show that holds up in the same quality, led by the same visionary, succeeded so much in comparison? Being an incredibly huge fan of both shows and a great admirer of Harmon's writing, I thought I'd dive into this. Rick and Morty had always seen critical acclaim, but it wasn't until season 2 that the show started to gain the worldwide steam we know it for today. Specifically, it was this particular episode in season 3 that gained it worldwide meme status.
I turned myself into a pickle, Morty! Boom! Big reveal, I'm a pickle. What do you think about that?
And whether people believe it to be a good or bad thing, it made the show a cultural icon. Ratings had more than doubled in the 3rd season, and overall formed an incredibly passionate, devoted fan base that swept it from culture cult status to potential religion. And sure, while this was great news for the show, its creators and avid viewers who can now look forward to 62 new episodes during this time of filming, its massive, almost overwhelming success paved the way for some pretty toxic fan mentality and just weird cringe.
To be fair, you have to have a very high IQ to understand Rick and Morty. The humor is extremely subtle, and without a solid grasp of theoretical physics, most of the jokes will go over a typical viewer's head. Fans understand this nihilistic outlook. They have the intellectual capacity to truly appreciate the depths of these jokes, to realize that they're not just funny, they say something deep about life. And yes, by the way, I do have a Rick and Morty tattoo. And no, you cannot see it. It's for the ladies' eyes only, and even they have to demonstrate that they're within 5 IQ points of my own, preferably lower, beforehand.
And of course, this happened, and I warn you, the following clips got that real high IQ shit the last one was talking about. Just try not to be too impressed.
I want Szechuan sauce. Where's my Szechuan sauce? I'm Kendall Rick! My beloved Dum Dum! I'm Kendall Rick! 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 Rick!
So as you can see, people like Albert Einstein's son over here didn't exactly paint the show in the best light for many, but I mean, what fan bases don't eventually grow in toxicity over time? Not that I'm excusing what these fans are doing, it's just that, I guess, every fan base has its dark side. So we all know of the massive popularity that surrounds the show. However, for those who have yet to get into it, you're probably wondering what exactly made it so successful? Why exactly are millions of people sporting Hot Topic t-shirts, making Instagram memes and cosplay TikToks, and even gatekeeping who gets to write for the show? What exactly makes it so popular? Well, a few things, although we can mainly accredit this to Dan Harmon and Justin Roiland's incredible writing talents. I know I've mentioned this earlier, but the pair truly do a fantastic job at combining intelligent jokes with toilet humor. And yeah, it probably sounds like the worst match on paper, but these two got it done. And in doing so, they were able to hit a wide audience that enjoyed both types of comedy. At the same time, they'd weave in these high-concept sci-fi elements that viewers can have fun digging into, or pseudo-intellectuals can pat themselves on the back for getting. And of course, this allowed for fan theories to run amok, generating more buzz and discussion around the show. But it wasn't just the cleverness of the show, however, that got people watching. The series landed incredibly well with its intended millennial audience, averaging 2.5 million viewers in the demographic in 2017, exceeding that of The Big Bang Theory and Modern Family, and earning its spot as the US's #1 comedy in 2017. This was in great part due to its appropriate servings of nihilistic, absurdist, and surreal humor. As a millennial, I can pretty much confirm that we've come to terms with the incoherence and misery of life, and shows like Rick and Morty that truthfully deal with existential conflict and even mental health can really resonate with the generation. And that's another thing the show does really well. It isn't just in a pissing contest with itself with how smart and wacky it can be, it also takes time to show us these relatable human layers in its characters. This definitely isn't typical of your usual absurdist cartoons. Shows like Family Guy and South Park, as funny as they both are in their own right, most of the time, tend to keep their characters one-dimensional for the sake of comedy. They don't really dig much deeper into these real-life issues and relationship dynamics or have their characters evolve significantly, but Rick and Morty does that, and it does that well. Kinda like Community does with its characters. Sure, Rick's that super smart asshole scientist, but the show eventually reveals this softer, more human side to him beneath the toxic exterior. Later episodes show that he actually does care deeply for others in his life, despite being a huge dick 90% of the time. For a series of talking fart clouds, Cronenberg monsters, and a character literally named Mr. Poopy Butthole, the show isn't afraid to get layered and real with its characters. It also helps that Dan Harmon and Justin Roiland work really well together. In an interview, they admitted to having that odd argument here and there, quote, over a tonal thing or a joke, but Roiland himself asserted that they never disagreed to any great extent over anything truly important. And of course, this lent itself to the success of its creative process and how the show never really lost steam despite being on air since 2012. As much as I am a fan of the show, like I said, I couldn't help but wonder why Dan Harmon's other brainchild, Community, didn't receive nearly the same amount of spotlight during its prime. I mean, Community's comedy was just as intelligent. Both shows were written according to Dan Harmon's unfailing story circle pattern, and you had an entire cast of incredible comedic talent. So what went wrong? Why didn't it receive the same level of fame? Despite having the same cleverness and edge as Rick and Morty in terms of writing, and also having multi-layered characters that offered far more than their stereotypical appearances and personalities suggested, Community admittedly took a more niche route in terms of its comedy. Like Rick and Morty wrangles with multiple high-concept ideas, yes, but Rick usually lays out the gist of whatever sci-fi idea they decide to tackle in the episode. You don't really have to understand what Schrodinger's cat is to get the episode A Wrinkle in Time or life simulation theories to laugh at that that scene where Morty literally lives an entire life in a VR game.
55 years. Not bad, Morty. You kind of wasted your 30s, though, with that whole bird watching phase.
Like any high-concept sci-fi film, or most of them at least, they pretty much lay the groundwork for you. Community, on the other hand, wasn't as forgiving with their episode themes and stories, making some of their nods to specific movies and Hollywood tropes confusing for those who haven't seen said film, TV show, or who aren't as familiar with the common cliches and storytelling elements in media. This can make some of Abed's meta-commentary fall flat for some, who Dan Harmon uses as a driving vehicle for pop culture references and calling out cliched tropes.
Balance restored, I guess. Movie reference.
I came across this little Reddit post during my research where one viewer commented on how episode 11 of season 5, an episode dedicated to parodying the 80s cartoon G.I. Joe, felt just a tad too niche in terms of references and made them feel like they weren't part of the club for that particular night. It's a shame, because like this G.I. Joe episode, Community prided in being incredibly inventive and unconventional with its episode formats. To quote the wise man, Forrest Gump, the show was like a box of chocolates. You never really knew what you were gonna get. It could be a mockumentary style one episode and claymation the next. Sometimes it'd be a musical, sometimes it'd be a mafia movie. And just to add to how smart the writing was, these fluid themes and formats never felt too random or gimmicky. A lot of the time they made sense according to the show's plot or development of certain characters. But going back to the Redditor I previously mentioned, they made the interesting observation that Community's other themed episodes didn't take me out of it because I was a fan of what they were making fun of. And when Community is parodying a film without a theme, like claymation or animation, it doesn't take anyone out of it. If they're doing a regular live action episode and referencing Goodfellas, even if I've never seen Goodfellas, I'm gonna enjoy the show because it's still taking place in the regular world. However, when the world the show is taking place in becomes one of the jokes, you really have to understand the reference to enjoy it, I think. That said, people also say you don't necessarily have to watch or be a fan of said movie or TV show to get the parodic theme of a specific Community episode. Because I mean, the dialogue, the characters, their fantastic comedic delivery, and a lot of the situational humor are enough for anyone to appreciate the show, regardless of their knowledge of pop culture. But knowing a few contextual things does help. So of course this wasn't exactly advantageous for them in the ratings. Community did well in resonating with its super geeked out, nitpicky moviegoer audience. There just weren't a whole lot of them. But it's also worth noting that perhaps the rating system that it was assessed against, also known as the Nielsen ratings, used to determine audience size and composition of TV programming in the US, were, as Digital Trends puts it, antiquated. Because Nielsen ratings at the time were focused on network programming, Dan Harmon was incredibly critical of this. He pointed out its inaccuracies in judging a show's viewership success in an era where most people are tuning into streaming services like Hulu or Netflix. In fact, he even poked fun at it in the show's series finale with the line,
"Viewers may be measured by a secretive, obsolete system based on selected participants keeping handwritten journals of what they watch. Show may be canceled and moved to the internet where it turns out tens of millions were watching the whole time. May not matter. Fake commercial may end with disclaimer gag which may descend into vain Chuck Lorre-esque rant by narcissistic creator. Creator may be unstable. Therapist may have told creator this is not how you make yourself a good person."
And this may have truly played a part in the show's cancellation. It turned out that even though Community had 5 low-rated seasons on NBC, it was among the top performers on Hulu. In fact, when SimilarWeb compiled the top 30 series streamed on the service, it found that most of the top shows were modest hits at best on network TV, but gained a ton of impressive online success among younger, more web-savvy audiences. But when talking about the criminal downfall of the comedic gem that was Community, it's important to mention the fumbling elephant in the room known as NBC. Now, NBC housed some of my favorite comedies of all time, these including The Office, Friends, 30 Rock, Scrubs, and of course the ever groundbreaking My Dad is Better Than Your Dad. But that didn't mean that they were free of sin. No, the network actually had quite a history of struggle in the last decade, wrangling with low ratings and poor executive decisions, and of course Community sadly wasn't free of this chaos. The network didn't seem to have much faith in the show, and admittedly it wasn't the most stellar in network ratings, but their further choices and decisions definitely didn't help matters. They firstly meddled with its schedule to make room for their other hit, 30 Rock, and eventually fired the creator and attempted to go on without the brains of the show, which will forever boggle my mind, leading to a terrible, terrible season 4. It's also worth noting that the replacement writers they hired were responsible for Aliens in America, a roadkill of a sitcom that lasted an entire 18 episodes, which actually seems pretty generous. Drew Gooden did a hilarious video which also talks about the decline of Community, and whatever this is. So if you're looking for a really good video essay and a good laugh, then definitely check his video out. But yep, despite the 4th season shelling out the same exact cast of lovable weirdos, it sadly saw the departure of a few core producers, actor-writer Dino Stamatopoulos, and the brilliant Marvel directors Anthony and Joe Russo, who went on to direct Captain America: The Winter Soldier. And as it rolled, or rather hobbled along, the season eventually started seeing an unsurprising dip in ratings, as if the show needed any more of that. I think Mike Hale of the New York Times got it right when he said the series had been dumbed down, its humor broadened past recognition, and the 2 episodes provided for review have had fewer laughs between them than a single good scene from the old Community. Truth hurts. It was so much of a train wreck. In fact, with the help of his rabid fanbase and actor Joel McHale, creator Dan Harmon was later rehired for the show's 5th and 6th seasons. There was no definitive rationale for why the studio decided this all of a sudden, but holy crap was it all for the better. The show was eventually back to its stride of pride with its genius returned at the helm. For the most part at least, it never really did bring back the laughs a minute that seasons 1 to 3 had. But this doesn't exactly mean that Dan Harmon was innocent in the whole debacle behind the scenes. In fact, it seemed like the show was running its own little soap opera of network defiance and stormy relationships and ungodly hours of shooting. Jim Rash, who plays the Dean, recalls filming a chaotic, screaming match of a scene for the episode Conspiracy Theories and Interior Design at 3 a.m. on a Saturday morning. Joel McHale compared their hours of work to feeling like they were shooting a movie a week.
Yes, I'm delirious right now.
I came in today at 4:30 in the afternoon. After doing like all these daytime stuff like laundry, like it's just like taking care of business, and then you come here and then you work till like 6 o'clock in the morning.
Which is admittedly great news for viewers and the show's dedicated fan base, because it's exactly this level of effort their team puts into the show that solidified Community as one of network TV's smartest and unapologetically experimental comedies. But the onset exhaustion and conflict were also due in large part to Harmon's perfectionist, yet at the same time procrastinator tendencies. Rumors also mention that he had an unconventional leadership style that was laced with alcohol, last-minute table reads and write-ups, tardiness, and one time an outright disappearance to San Francisco to attend the Sketchfest Comedy Festival. He wasn't exactly the easiest guy to work with some writers even admitting wanting to leave if Harmon had stayed on the 4th season. Bluntly put, he was a bit of a control freak and could have used more collaborative abilities when he first hopped on as showrunner and writer. There was also the conflict he had with former writer Megan Gans, who, after she didn't reciprocate the romantic feelings he confessed to her, became the subject of abusive behavior from Harmon. He's since publicly apologized for his actions, calling himself an awful boss and owning up to his faults, an apology that Gans, while not offering forgiveness off the bat, has since accepted. According to stories and articles on the issue, Dan was indeed all the assholey things he called himself, though Gans did label his admission a masterclass in how to apologize. And then there was Chevy Chase. It seems that the lines between his dickish, unhinged, yet hilarious boomer of a character known as Pierce Hawthorne and his on-set persona began to blur, with him and Harmon constantly duking it out behind the scenes. According to accounts from the actors, with all the tireless work they invested in each episode, Chevy wasn't exactly a fan of the hours. Dan Harmon explained it as him coming from a world of 80s filmmaking, where feature film stars were given more leniency and breaks when they requested. Compare this to the backstage world of Community that was probably just as turbulent and unpredictable as the show itself, where Chevy and the rest of the cast were pressed to work 12-hour days, with some scenes taking up to 20 takes, whether they thought they nailed it or not. On top of that, Chevy wasn't exactly a fan of how his character was being written. He didn't like that his character was being portrayed as the befuddled and out-of-touch old man, even though it was exactly what made his character one of the funniest elements of the show.
We can have what the kids are calling a sausage fest.
I'm not much of a sausage guy, Pierce. Maybe next time.
This resulted in a ton of conflict between him and Harmon, which included Chevy walking off set and not returning during the filming of the 3rd season finale, which resulted in Harmon giving a "fuck you, Chevy" speech during the wrap party in front of the actor and his family, which resulted in angry, profanity-laced voicemails that Chevy left for Harmon, which the dude decided to famously broadcast to a live audience during a show of his stand-up, Harmontown. So yeah, shit hit the fan. The 4th season eventually saw the departure of Chevy Chase, who, for all the trouble he caused on set, took with him an integral comedic element of the show. Without Pierce, the study group lost itself that much-needed generational friction that added new levels of hilarity to the series. This chink in Community's armor eventually formed a full-on crack once Donald Glover, also known as the show's Troy Barnes, left to create his show Atlanta for FX. This was a huge blow to the series. Not only had they now lost 2 of their funniest characters, they also lost half of arguably Community's strongest friendship, Troy and Abed. With all this going on, watching from season 4 onwards was like watching a show that was once on top of its game suffer a horridly slow and unnecessarily painful death. And finally, after season 5, NBC gave it the axe they always seemed to be teasingly swinging above the series. Until, of course, it was picked up by the ever-successful, unstoppable beast in the world of video streaming, Yahoo Screen. This is not a joke. Now, I wish I could say that by some stroke of luck, Community gained and nurtured itself some intense new following on this ever-prolific streaming service, but this is The Darkest Timeline after all. The show had itself its 6th and final season before bidding farewell to TV altogether. The ratings for the season, though never released, also somewhat confirmed Harmon's suspicion on the ever-obsolete Nielsen ratings. Turns out that Yahoo's numbers were enough for him to go, quote, "Holy shit, I always knew there was like way more people watching this shit than whatever that 0.9 represented." Well, there you go. So bringing it all together, why didn't a show as passionately loved and groundbreaking as Community ever live up to the well-deserved hype and fanaticism of Rick and Morty, despite really close similarities in quality? As amazing as the former was, it was just a bit too niche and a bit too turbulent behind the scenes to gain the mainstream fanfare of Harmon's following creation. Plus, there was a lack of luck involved too. Community wasn't fortunate enough to live in a time when the Nielsen rating system actually counted online streaming services. But of course, you've also got Adult Swim to thank for keeping Rick and Morty alive. Compared to how NBC absolutely botched one of the very few shows that enabled them to call themselves a network for smart comedy, that's a thing, they did that, and then Axe said smart comedy, Adult Swim actively catered to fan demands, releasing mobile video games, a VR game, and even reaching out to their fans in person through a pop-up shop designed as a Rickmobile vehicle. These actions show that they actually cared to some extent about nurturing and growing the show's existing fanbase, though granted the series did do a stellar job in the studio's ratings. But some people also pointed out how Rick and Morty was able to dominate its market by being on a network with a smaller audience, and I guess less beastly competitors? With its narrow target market, how exactly was Community meant to compete with NBC's competitors like CBS's The Big Bang Theory and Two Broke Girls? Two shows with incredibly huge audiences. Like I said, The Darkest Timeline. So that lent to its demise. But not all things have been doom and gloom since its cancellation. Just very recently, in fact, Community found itself a home on Netflix. You may have heard of it, it's a pretty cool streaming service. And has somewhat formed itself a cult following version 2. Netflix, being the massive platform that it is, has managed to garner the show a whole new audience that are just now realizing how awesome it is. People are starting to see their Facebook feeds with memes and GIFs, and new viewers are starting to understand the context of old yet popular memes and GIFs. It's finally picking up that hype and steam it always deserved, and it may be a lot too late, but still, with all this newfound love, it seems more plausible than ever that at the very least, we're in the timeline of hashtag 6 seasons in a movie. So I hope you guys enjoyed my little, I don't even know what to call it, deep dive, I guess, into one of the best sitcoms I believe has ever graced network TV. I always found it fortunate that Rick and Morty gained the immense popularity that it did, because with how intelligently and creatively the show was written, it absolutely deserves that. I guess it always made me wonder why its somewhat sister of a show never really did gain the same success. And just a bit of trivia before I end the video, Dan Harmon actually recently admitted to considering Community as his crowning achievement. Talk about picking a favorite child. But yeah, are you guys fans of Community or Rick and Morty or both? Or none, in which case, thanks for watching this video anyway. Let me know your thoughts on either series or any of Dan Harmon's other works. And as always, like and subscribe if you like these kind of pop culture commentaries and want to see more. And I'll see you guys in the next video.